Hi, hello everyone. Welcome to another edition of The Big Shift. And today we have a wonderful person, an extraordinary person, not just a sporting legend, but a titan also in business who has achieved unbelievable things. It's with great pleasure I want to introduce Sir David Lloyd. Hi, David. How are you?
Thank you. You great intro there. I can relax now, and have a cup of coffee, and come back. No, thank you very much for those very kind words.
You've had an amazing journey. You know, you really have. From you and your brother, you dominated the British tennis sporting area through the 70s and the 80s. You was a junior Wimbledon champion
Yep.
and doubles. That's right as well.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a bit about that? Because I know people are out there and have no idea what it would actually be
Yeah.
like to be a Wimbledon champion.
Well, many years ago, when I was about 11, I was a very good footballer, and I loved football, and I wanted to be a pro footballer. And I was a dirty knobby style, so I was a real very quick inside forward, and I was fearless, and I was good. But when I was 11, I got an injury to my knee called osteochondritis, which really stopped me playing football because you couldn't touch the knee for a year. So I learned to fish off Southend Pier, which is the longest in the world. So I learned how to fish and enjoyed it. And then I went into tennis because it was better for my knee. So I started tennis at maybe 11 and 12, where my brothers started at 5 and 6. So I started to play tennis at 12, and I was pretty good at it. And my dad, bless his soul, he died about 3 years ago at 94, so he had a very good run. Um, in those days, school was important, but he realised I had a little bit of a talent, and he allowed me to basically put tennis above education, which is, in those days, a very brave thing to do. And I got pretty good. It was amateur in those days. Obviously, won junior Wimbledon, and then went on to play Davis Cup for my country, and got to the semi-final of Wimbledon doubles and many other things, and played Davis Cup. So it was a great experience. And don't let anybody who's done well at sport and business tell you that the business side is more. Uh, it might make you more money, hopefully, but to hear your name called out, David Lloyd playing for Great Britain, and then the next 3 or 4 hours it's game to Great Britain, not David Lloyd. You're playing for your country. There is nothing like that. You cannot buy that.
Yeah, it really must be a wonderful feeling. Quite emotional, I should think. To be there, to have that responsibility, but to have the awareness of where you've actually arrived at too. Because the middle bit is always real hard work, and discipline and
No, no,
giving.
we
David,
ran
isn't it?
we ran every morning. We trained every morning. I was part of a team called the Barrett Boys. We got up at 6:30 every morning with army boots, with weights around our ankles. We ran in the wet. We ran in the cold, and we were disciplined. And that bears that sort of training you take through life, because you have to be disciplined, you have to be on time, you have to have a goal, you have to believe in yourself, and we learnt that at a very young age. And I was lucky because I was a much better doubles player, and then to to have to be able to have played for your country with your brother and win some
Yeah,
pretty
it's
big
quite something.
matches, even that is another incredible plus factor. So I would never. The tennis side has been fantastic, and I met so many lovely people. I played in the amateur game and I played in the pro game. I played against Gonzalez. I also played against Borg. I also played against McEnroe. I played against Laver. So I had a very long difference. I was lucky to play in different eras, and to look back, and being a great friend of Lou Hode and Ken Rosewall,
Hmm.
you really you can't explain what great champions and great people they were.
I mean, it's like boxing in a way. I've always loved tennis, by the way, especially the singles. Not that I was ever really good, David. I really wasn't. Of course, in my head, I used to think I could have a game, but
Good. That's good. That's good. It's
but
going to make
but
it
I
happen.
really no. I was suited to other things. I was never going to be a tennis player. But love the game. Love the speed of the game. It was very tactical, and I remember them old days as well. McEnroe, all of them days. There was unbelievable personalities.
Yeah.
Tell us, it was, he
Oh yeah,
was
I know.
quite.
I mean, I played against Mac. And you've got to remember, we played with a very small wooden racket. Meaning
Hmm,
if you go back and look at a tennis racket in one of the museums,
yeah,
they are small and they're heavy. They're about 15 and a half ounces. That's a heavy racket. And, then came the metal, then came the aluminium, and now it's all graphite, very much lighter. But there were characters. I played a Davis Cup match in Romania uh, many, many years ago, doubles with my brother, and we're playing against Ilie Nastase and Jon Tiriac. And Jon Tiriac used to be in the secret police, so he's a pretty scary figure. And Nastase was Nastase, he used to
yeah.
shout at you. Anyway, cut a long story short, there's about 10,000 screaming Romanians in this stadium, and we're about halfway through the second set. Very good match. They were a good pair, we were a good pair. And Nasty's taunting me. He's saying things to me that I can't even repeat. Even in this very friendly podcast, I can't repeat it. But I said to him, Nasty, if you say that one more time, I'm going to jump the net and I'm going to bop you. Simple as that. And he did say it again. So I jumped the net and grabbed him. So you can imagine what happened in this stadium of 10,000 people. Nastase was a superhero. I mean,
Yeah.
Nastase couldn't walk anywhere in Romania without being mobbed. Anyway,
Yeah.
cut a long story short, this ruckus carried on for, I don't know, 10, 20 minutes or whatever. And then he leaned over the top of the people trying to separate us and tapped me on the head with his racket. Didn't hit me hard, but he hit me with his racket, just on the head. So I said, that's it, we're claiming the match. So I grabbed my thing. John's hiding in the corner because anything like that, John used to just go away because he knew me. And anyway, so we went off the court for an hour and a half. The referees decided that they couldn't give us the match and we came back playing. But Nasty was banned for a year after that incident.
What was McEnroe like as a character? Because he'd come across very, very forward, didn't he, in the old days? Very
McEnroe,
argumentative, right?
oh
Especially
no,
to the umpires.
totally. But McEnroe was, in his younger years, when he was the best in the world by a long way, those outbursts were totally natural. He couldn't understand why the linesman wasn't a good linesman and he was a tennis player. He couldn't understand a mistake. He couldn't accept the fact that the linesman, it's a terrible job. It's like the referees at football. I mean, I
Yeah.
know that some of them are pretty
Between the
bad,
devil
but
and the deep
they, but
blue,
they, they,
literally.
can't, they can't win.
Yeah.
They're seeing it through their eyes, and we've got TVs and monitors that are proving that they're making a mistake. And so McEnroe couldn't understand that, and he just flipped. And he became aggressive, and you've seen all the outbursts. But off the court, he was a good guy, and in his younger years, it was, I think, spontaneous. But I think when he started to lose his ability a little bit, and people were beating him, then
Yeah.
I believe he used it as a tactic to put his opponents off.
Yeah,
Uh, you
he
know,
was an unbelievably passionate guy,
oh
right?
yeah,
As well,
absolutely.
super talented, right? And
Oh, what a
of
player!
course, it was the passion as well. I think that pulled him, and absolutely. I mean, who do you think from them golden years? All right, really, that 20 years. Who do you think was the best? Who was the toughest? Who really was the best? Do you think, David?
I did a business talk about 2 years ago on who was the greatest male tennis player, and I went back all the way to Gonzalez, and I think I could make a case for 6 or 7 to be the best ever. But no one could ever prove it because you see, Rod Laver, he won 11 Grand Slams, okay,
Uh, well,
tournaments. He won 4 in the same year. that means then there's only two people who've ever done that, him and Donald Budge, in the same year. So that's not a career Grand Slam, that's a year Grand Slam. So you win all four majors. He turned professional, so for 6 years he couldn't play in the amateur game. When he came out of the amateur game, when it went open, he won all four again. So if he's won four here and he's missed 6 years and he wins four there, then you've got to think that in those 6 years he couldn't play. So he missed 24 Grand Slams. He's going to win at least half of them. So if he wins 12, he would be above Federer and Nadal in Grand Slams. So you can make a case for him. You can make a case for, obviously, Nadal, Federer, Djokovic.
Massive talent.
But Gonzalez turned pro when he was 18. So he won 2 US Opens. He turned pro at 18, and he didn't come back to the game until he was 41. So he missed 23 years. At 41 at Wimbledon, I don't know if you ever remember, one of the greatest matches of all time at Wimbledon was Gonzalez against Passerelle. Passerelle was, at the time, number 3 in the world. Young guy, Gonzalez beat him, and he's 41. So you've got to think that the professionals were better. Now they're all the same because there's no amateurs and professionals. It's open tennis. So you know what? I think Laver's probably the greatest ever. Overall, I think on clay courts, Nadal's the greatest ever. And at Wimbledon, probably Federer's the greatest ever. Yeah, but overall, I think you've got to opt for Laver because he won on all services twice in the same year.
Certainly a very innate talent, latent talent.
And I was lucky to play against him. I'm a friend of Rockets, and he's still the most charming man you'll ever meet. Same with Ken Rosewall. These guys were real pro. Then in those days, although they were well known, they weren't the film star type people as of today. Now Nadal can walk down a shopping street without being mobbed, and nor could Federer. But in those days, it wasn't quite like that. They mixed the film stars. But it wasn't like it wasn't a film star type of sport.
For your mind, coming through that journey, to achieve the wonderful things in that sport as you do, I know, as in any sport or any achievement, to get to that height, it takes a certain character forced in a certain way, and there are certain elements in there that need to be present. What would you say for tennis players? I mean, I assume this translates now into the types, but what would you say was the main characteristic type of element that you certainly needed and used, and that you recognized that other really top flight tennis stars of the time certainly had as well?
I think in all sport, not just tennis, in all sport, the most important thing is your mind. You have to believe that you can be the best. You have to believe in yourself, and you have to never give in. So I think your mind is probably, in all sport, is probably 80% of the total person. Now, if you get the racket talent like a Federer, and you have the mind as well, that's when you get the great champions. Because you can get people, if you look at the Chrissy Everts, the Even Lendls, they were machines, but their brain made them a machine. Then you look at the talent like McEnroe and Nastase, they can make the ball do anything. They can make the ball sing. That's a racket talent. But to be the best, you need to have a mental ability. The same, I think it's the same in everything. The same in football. If you're not mentally strong, I don't think you can make it. So I would say 80% of every sport is in your mind.
I'd have to agree with you. And certainly when we go further onto your business successes. I mean, even for the journey that I've had, it's certainly the emotional intelligence. With the mental, the forged ability to be able to be single-minded, start with the end in mind, and doggedly, tenaciously finish is if you watch, Borg's a very good example. If you watch Borg play his matches, and they could be five hours, he didn't show one bit of emotion till the match point when he won. Then he collapsed to the floor. For those 5 hours, the guy was just in his own world,
and he didn't believe anyone could beat him, and he was in that world. And then the minute the match was ended, he collapsed to the floor and showed emotion.
Saying that, David, look, there's always a contrast in life. I'm sure you agree. There's the good and the bad, the night and the day, the good, the middle bit, and all this. So, what would you say over them times was a low point for you, or would have been a tough time to navigate in them years?
I think I think you go through a lot of them, but I mean, as long as you've got the strong mind to saying, right, you got to learn from your defeats, you got to learn from your problems, and then hopefully put them right and move on. Yeah, I think that looking back, I wouldn't have changed anything I did really. I was lucky because I lived in the amateur and the professional world, and that's why the business was started. When I was playing at my peak, as I say, it was amateur. So I used to take 4 or 5 months off in the winter and do things. And it started in 1974 when I was the coach of the club in Canada because I took the winter off.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's when I thought, wow, and that's when my dream started. I was in charge. I conned my way into the job, pretending I've run clubs before. Of course, I hadn't. But the guy liked my accent, gave me the job, and I basically learned on the job. And I fell in love with this concept of being able to play tennis indoors in a beautiful club with all people enjoying it. And that's when it started. So if I hadn't have been in the amateur era, I would never have seen all these clubs. So I'm pleased I was in that era.
Yeah, look, I can absolutely, and you went on to create wonderful things around that, around that learning journey and them experiences. If I can just take it back a little bit, because I'm really interested. I know people will be in Tim Henman, because you
Yeah.
coached him, right? You coached him.
I found Tim Henman when he was 9. I'm just going to have a cup of coffee here. Sorry about that. I miss it.
No,
I got involved with a guy who's died called Jim Slater. Jim Slater came to me with Slater Walker, very, very, very smart man, and absolutely laser beam thought process. And he came to me, called me, and he said, David, I want to do to tennis what I've done with chess. And I've made chess now Britain one of the best nations in the world. When I started, we had no grandmasters at all. So I said, oh, how did you do that? And he explained how he did it. He said, I've gone to the LTA, and the LTA have told me they don't want to get involved with me. So I'm calling you because I know you've got the clubs, and I know you're very outspoken about the LTA, which I was, because I think that, in those days it was run exceptionally badly. In fact, you couldn't have run it more badly than they did. So Jim and I joined forces. So he put the money in for the school, and I, with the company, put the money in for the tennis. And we just had a laser beam goal to find tennis players who could become world champions. And that was when it started. And so I went out there looking, and I thought, I didn't agree with the LTA. I thought, and still do think, and it's been proven to be right, that you've got to find this talent at a very young age, 8 or 9 or 10, where the LTA said, no, can't do that. It's got to be 13 or 14. And that's what we did. So we went out there. We had trials in the Daily Mail newspaper where we just wanted to find talent. And Tim was one of those. And so he came to it. He went to the school. He had coaching every day, and he stayed with us from 9 until 16.
He was a great player, look, and he's done wonderful things. I mean, you got him into the top 10, David. It's been said, and I can imagine that through your guidance and tools. I mean, there's a lot of people we come through that shape wonderful things. We know that together. It's a collective. But I can see the central influence you would have had at key moments there, obviously, for obvious reasons. It is said you got him into the top 10, and I can see you being there in many ways to support him going through that. In the old days, a young David Lloyd on the court with Tim, would you have beaten him? How do you think it would have went? How do
I
you
would
think it would have went, David?
I certainly would have beaten him when he was 9,
Yeah.
but when he got to about 16, I think he probably could have beaten me. He would have beaten me. But no, what we did with these young kids, we took the game to a different professional level. They 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 went to a boarding school. They played tennis every day. They trained every day, and I brought in an army trainer. And yeah, we trained them till they dropped. But if you train someone till they drop, you can make it fun. You really can. And what Tim had, and people say he failed, he didn't. He got the best out of his ability. He got to 3 in the world. He got to the semi-final of Wimbledon 3 times. He was a great player, but he didn't quite have the racket talent. Not quite, but he did have the mental talent. Tim never lost a match without trying 100%. He never, ever admitted he was tired, although he was. And that is what I mean about mental strength. And we tested them at 9 or 10 on that. We ran them till they dropped. And I know my dad used to say, that's not right, Dave, what are you doing? I said, look, if they're going to be professional tennis players, they've got to realise that they can go through pain barriers and things. And people talk about pain barriers. It's not really a pain barrier. It's going on when other people are dropping. And you know, you need to have that. You need to carry on. And Tim never put in a bad performance. And he ran until he dropped. And it was a proper drop where some people pretend they're tired and drop when they're not tired. You know those people, they fake it.
What I've seen in my journey, I've had a lot of adversities, and there's a lot out there as well about me in the press. But apart from that, it's been the same for me, David. It really is. Yes, the clever stuff, of course. We need that. We have to learn that. But it's really, what do you have in you as a person, as a human being, to keep improving as a human being, to have the humility to be able to learn from people who know better, to get that advice in, but to have the aptitude to correct it was certainly absolutely key for me, and absolutely is. I'm always aware of this. You went on then. You achieved wonderful stuff then, and then I've researched a lot about you. I've read a lot of stuff. So how did you come then to make the transition at the start into business?
Well, no, what I think, I think a lot of these agents have been very bad for players because they take over everything, they take a big cut, and they don't look at what's going to happen after they stop. And I didn't have an agent. John had an agent. I said, I'm not having an agent. No one's going to spend my money. If I lose my money, I lose my money. If I gain money, it's mine. So I did it totally independently, and I started the dream of building the clubs when I was still playing. So I was doing it at the same time. So when it was launched, people still knew me as a tennis player. My name hadn't sort of disappeared, which made an enormous difference. And I just believed in it 100%. And it was 2 years. Raising the money was 2 years of really difficult times, because you'd go into a meeting with these bankers, and I'm not going to change the word to a W, but that's exactly what they were. They looked at you and they said, well, where's your education? I said, well, I left school at 15. They said, oh, so what do you know about it? I said, well, I've been around the world. And so it goes on like that.
Yeah.
And then one meeting I had, which was a very famous meeting with County NatWest Bank. And I went there, and these 3 guys came in, about the same age as me. I was about 34. And I showed the plans and stuff. And they looked at it. So the guy turned around to me and said, what's it worth as a warehouse? I said, I'm not building a warehouse. I'm building an indoor tennis centre. So it went on like this. Then they said to me, how are they going to get there? So I said, do you play golf? The guy said, yeah, of course I play golf. I said, well, how do you get to your golf club? He said, I go by car. I said, you know what? That's how they're going to get to the club. So now this is a true story, by the way. I picked my stuff up and walked out, and they didn't invest. If they had put in their £125,000,
Wow.
12 years later, it would have been worth 51 million.
Let me come in there for the viewers, because this is a real education, David, right? And there's so many blocks, to our dreams. It's about solving the problems. I have a great saying: after every 10 no's, there's a yes.
Yes,
Right?
I agree.
It's a numbers game. I mean, there's other things to it, but that's the bottom line. And I know many other people there, super talented with wonderful ideas. They need to get it to a certain stage of development, certainly their idea, before they can start pitching to people and really start getting some traction on that, right? But that doesn't mean that what they don't have is wonderful, and everyone, I'm like I grew up in the East End, and I went to university after, much later, when I was I was already building companies by then. I already learned, and I didn't have no massive education, but what I had was life skills and people skills,
Right.
and I was willing to graft, and I was willing to learn, and I wasn't going to give up, David. I wasn't going to think that anyone else was better than me, because I knew that they wasn't. If they could do it, so could I, right?
That's right. Well, I mean, to give you how you think, when I arrived, my first overseas trip in Africa, I arrived in the middle of Africa, and I'm 18, whatever. I get out, and of course, the taxi driver screws me, and you soon learn. You soon learn, because it's your money coming out the door, and you have to be tough, and you have to learn, and so that sort of learning you can't learn at school or university, because this is real. I mean, it is real when you arrive in a place where you arrive in Nigeria, that you have to bribe every single guard to get in the country. I mean, you learn. You learn. If you don't learn, you're finished. So everybody must, if you're going to achieve something. A lot of people don't want to do. A lot of people are very happy with going in a big company and going up the ladder slowly. That's great. That's their route. It's safe. That's fine. But other people want to achieve things. And if someone, when I do business speeches, if someone has a dream, they must really believe it, and they can make it happen. And they have to have the dream. They have to make it happen. And all I tell them is, whatever you think your income is, lower it by 20%. Whatever you think your costs are, add 20%. Now, if it still makes a profit, don't let anyone in the world persuade you not to do it.
It's good. It's good advice, really. It's not for the faint-hearted, but very doable. For a certain person, and it is about development. And even if you went to university for 3 years, that's 3 years of your life you're giving out. I mean, when I was there, they're training guys to go and get hired, but I was already doing it, and I was thinking, wow, even if you get hired, let's say you do 15 years, you have a wonderful career, you don't actually own anything. I thought I can't, I must, so there's no safety really in it as such. So I thought, well, look, I'm going to go a different route. But it is tough, David, and for you at the start, you would have had them brick walls and that toughness, them tough hurdles to really solve.
Again,
so what would
you're absolutely right. And
what would you say to people at the start of their journey is the most important thing, again, really, David?
Doing your homework, really doing your homework. And as I say, whatever it is, don't let anyone dissuade you not to do it. But you've got to be really realistic with your figures, because when it's your dream, you automatically think higher. And therefore, you've got to have what everyone calls it now, a safety net or a margin or whatever. You have to do that, because when it is your dream, you do tend to think you've got to be realistic. And I look at, I probably get, well, not so many now, but I used to get probably one or two business ideas a week. And I used to look at them and write them back and say, look, guys, if you believe in it, you're going to put some money in it, and you've really done your sums, go out and do it. And don't let anyone, you're going to have walls put in the way, you're going to have big walls, and at the end of the day, you might not have to climb the wall, you might have to walk around it. So there's always a solution, and it's sometimes a compromise, but you've got to do it, and you've got to go forward, and don't let anyone dissuade you to be put off your plan.
Thanks for tuning in, guys, to a wonderful new segment of The Big Shift with Stephen Gillen. Make sure to subscribe, go into stephengillen.com and sign up for more wonderful content to expedite, help, and support you on your own personal journey of success.